So, a lot of people have asked me how I read so many books every single year. And actually, I made up a rule last year that I wanted to read 50 books that weren't related to school or work. And I ended up reading 56 odd books that year, that being the year of 2018, that were not directly related to school or work. Of course, everything can be indirectly related, so I like to say not directly related in the sense it wasn't assigned or that. And this was actually during the year 2018. I was doing the second half of my master's in tax law at BU, and then I ended up taking the DC bar in the summer too, where I actually didn't do any reading for pleasure, so to speak. I just studied my bar materials, and I would say I was actually reading quite a bit for the Masters of Law, the LLM, and for the bar exam, but I didn't count those in the list of the books that I did. So I started kind of in mid to latest January, like the January 20th, and the first book I read in its entirety of the year 2018 was American Gods. I had actually read it before, somebody had recommended it to me, but I decided to start doing something new that I had thought about. I had done CD audiobooks in the past, but I'd been thinking about getting this new audio service, and I'd also heard about something called LibriVox, I had done LibriVox in the past, which is free audiobooks, but there's this thing called Libby where you can connect it to it's an app that connects to your home library, and at that time it was the Boston Public Library, which if you go to Wikipedia is one of the largest public libraries in the world. I think it's in the top 5. I think it's they include university libraries. I think it's Harvard, and then maybe NYU. Well, of course, Library of Congress is probably on top. It's like Library of Congress, Harvard, New York Public Library, and then I think Boston Public Library. I may be a little bit off on that. And I think also the Texas library system is huge. And so I started doing audiobooks. I did a whole lot. A great thing you can do is increase the speed depending on the voice. So sometimes you can do it ×3 speed. Sometimes you can do it less than that. Because maybe the person's reading is already fast enough. And I got on a few services, and they're really great. And sometimes there's deals and all this stuff, and I'm sure they give you like a free trial. And like I said, Libby, Libby, is a free library app. So I ended up doing 56 books, not related to work or school. So the first half of the year I was in kind of traveling around doing interviews and stuff like that. I had gone to a whole bunch of different cities like San Francisco, Seattle, and then I had gone over to DC for interviews, and I was living in Boston. I also visited family in New Orleans and Texas, so there's a lot of traveling. A good time to do reading is on the plane, but if you're doing audiobooks, you can do them in the morning too.
In a quarter mile, use the right 2 lanes to turn slightly right toward North FM 620.
After that, I was doing a little bit of reading. Of course, I'm always reading the news and things like that, so that's all you're adding. And, I also enjoy social media. I haven't measured it out how much I spend, but,
use the right 2 lanes to turn slightly right toward North FM 620. Then use any lane to turn slightly right onto North FM 620.
Articles, but I do use it as a source to find news, but usually to stay up to date with friends. And I try to be an avid photographer. Not saying I'm the best in the world, but I try to take photos of, kind of my experiences, and sometimes I post them on social media. And then
use any lane to turn slightly right onto North FM 620.
In 1 year, and then I said, all right, I want to do 50 books before the
continue on North FM 620 for 3/4 of a mile.
And I ended up getting 2 books 60. I haven't finished it yet. I'm kind of going through 2. Infinite Jest and the first Game of Thrones book. But I'm trying to be eclectic in my taste. A lot of this is for pleasure. And I think if you just add in your reading as much as you can. I like to wake up in the morning. I like to taste a lot of books too. There's a quote from George R.R. Martin: "Sleep is good, but books are better."
In a quarter mile, use the left lane to take the Ranch to Market Road 620 West Ramp.
Of 2018, so that is, somewhat cut into my schedule, but it works well. I wake up in the morning, I make my phone calls. I like to call family and everything. And then as I'm, commuting to work, I can listen to an audiobook. That's the walk, that's being on the
Use the
bus,
left lane to take the ranch to Market Road 620 West ramp.
for an extended period of time, so to speak, or I'm taking a break from work, listen to an audiobook, and then you add up all these minutes, and let's say you have it on speed.
Continue for 1 mile.
Books, and that's how I reached
Head west on North FM 620. Continue on North FM 620 for 4 miles.
Then now that I'm basically past the 50 mark, I'm thinking, well, I really want to hit some books that are over 1,000 pages long, because I did do some short books like The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I also did some longer books. I did the entire Harry Potter series, which was actually the first time in my life. So I think it's cool, and I know a lot of people say audiobooks aren't necessarily the same. I've actually done some, not extensive research, but extensive light research on determining whether audiobooks are the same as reading. And I think if you can get the story through your mind, then it is as good as reading. Now, there isn't there's sort of a magic to memorizing these things. I wouldn't say I'm more of a tactile or a auditory listener or learner. But if I can get that information, I used to do podcasts all the time. I used to live in Amsterdam and I ride my bike, and I was thinking, man, I'm doing all these podcasts and they're great, but what if I was doing books too? And, because I was kind of picky with my podcasts. I really wanted things that were either touching emotionally or that I could really gain a lot of info from, good speakers, that type of thing. And I thought it was worthwhile to do investing doing research on what the topic is about, and even reviews. Unless I really, really liked a special guest or something on certain podcasts. And so the world is an incredible place. I mean, I watched, lectures and lectures in addition to my studies and all my programs online. I mean, I would, from my bachelor's to my JD to my first master's and second master's, I was constantly trying to gain as much information as I could. And in some sense, I'm not saying it's all about listening to lectures. I mean, I'm watching Game of Thrones right now. I'd say it's an entertainment and educational experience, and also be kind of a social, exciting thing, because I can, talk about it with people. So it's sort of a social enhancer too, and it's also pleasure. It's something fun and entertaining to watch. So that's how I reached basically over 100 books from January 2018 to May 2019. And I'm still going. I'm working on the first Game of Thrones book. I've passed the halfway point on that, and I'm excited for that. I've been doing a lot of traveling this May 2019 for work primarily, but also a little bit of personal pleasure on the weekend, which kind of slowed down reading a bit. But, the audiobook can fill in a lot of spare time, and that's a great thing. So that's my secret of how I got to read so many books.